in order for
But
your scenario to work, you have to not tell the truth.
This is why I don't think that it's worth it for Walz to take like the ultra kind position and to say, oh, there should be no violence and protest, because people like Sean and all the other Republicans will constantly mischaracterize every single thing they say.
Steven, Sean, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sean, I'll start with you. I come at this from the perspective of somebody who's not anti-ICE, not anti-law enforcement, but always critical of any time you have government officials obviously using lethal force against citizens, as I think we all should be. But when I look at this latest shooting that is dividing everybody, the shooting of Alex Pretti, and we've all seen the different video angles, it seems to me, given that he was disarmed before they shot him, given the fact that there were multiple agents restraining him, pushing him towards the ground, it seems to me like an unjustified shooting that could potentially be considered prosecuted for either murder or manslaughter at some point. But where are you at on this shooting?
Right. So, like essentially there are good shoots and bad shoots in terms of legality, but there's like shootings like this that exist in maybe like a moral gray area, because we know with the benefit of hindsight that they got the firearm away from him. Now, there's a lot of speculation that the firearm that the guy had, Alex Pretti, is one of these defective firearms that will like often improperly discharge. And I've seen video that makes the case that that has happened. It's not confirmed as far as I know, but if you have officers yelling gun, 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 then you get the gun removed. And not every officer knows that. Hopefully in that situation, people start shouting clear so that they know that the gun is gone. But then you hear a gunshot seconds later, and then people respond to that gunshot. You're in a situation where somebody who died shouldn't have died, obviously, and it's a tragedy, but it's not a crime. It's not a murder. It's not a manslaughter, because they're responding to circumstances in that moment. And legally, this is how we judge those standards. That being said, it is tragic. Like, I wish this guy would not have gotten shot in this scenario. It's just that's what it looks like happened as of right now.
All right, Steven, your perspective on this.
Yeah, so I mean, unless there's more circumstances that I'm not aware of, I just don't see any reason why the officers would have interpreted him as being a threat. We've heard a lot of crazy things from this administration, from Kristi Noem, from the guy who just got fired, but I want to say Bongino, but it's not him. Bovino?
Yeah.
Greg
The guy
Bovino.
who was the commander, the commander of the at-large forces for ICE. And then Trump himself has, been posting on Truth and everything that this guy was attacking officers and was brandishing his weapon and acting in a threatening manner. And I just don't see that anywhere. I don't see how this cop could have ever thought that this person was a threat. There's a lot of questionable stuff leading up to the altercation, to where he's, pushing this guy, pepper spraying him. I really just don't see any justification. There's some things you can kind of be on the wall with, but for this particular shoot, I don't see how it was an ethical or a legal shoot when one considers the totality of the circumstances. I don't think that officer should have ever felt like his life was in danger.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, Sean, legally speaking, is whether the officer would have a reasonable fear of their life being in or bodily safety being in imminent danger. And if they do, then that's where you get a legally justified shooting. But if they don't, and not to say they weren't scared, they could fear for their life, but that fear might not be reasonable to an average person. And when you have a situation where this guy is basically like face down towards the ground, his back is up, there is a gun involved, and you mentioned that it may have discharged. Of course, we don't know that for sure. That's being investigated, and I guess my question is, how much does that even change, though? Because well-trained officers hear a gun discharge and just immediately unload 10 bullets on the person in front of them who isn't holding or touching a gun. That doesn't sound right to me, Sean. Not that I'm, trained as an LEO.
Well, sure, because you're skipping a few steps. So first of all, prior to them removing the firearm from him, it was identified. They're all shouting gun, gun, gun. So everyone in that space knows that this suspect has a gun at that moment. And then they get the firearm away. We don't know if all of the officers know that that firearm has been removed. Then you hear the discharge of a weapon. So it's like, oh, everybody identified that this guy had a gun, whether they saw it or not. They understand that that's what's being called out to the other officers. Then you hear a discharge of a firearm and they react to that discharge. So it's not like a gunshot from across the street that had nothing to do with anything while they were first approaching this guy. This is mid altercation, mid resisting arrest that this happens, which is why, again, I consider this an unfortunate shooting, but not a criminal shooting.
Right. I don't know if you make a massive mistake in your perception and somebody is disarmed and still shot because you misunderstand something. I mean, isn't that what manslaughter charges
Well,
are in
is
cases?
somebody's disarmed when, though? Like, we're talking within a span of a couple of seconds. Like, he did have the gun on him. That's why the guns were drawn in response. You have all these people yelling out gun, gun, gun. So they think that he has the firearm. And then again, we don't know right now if it's the case that this gun actually discharged. It
How
looks like it from a video, but it's a slow down, grainy video. I'll give you that. But you have a discharge of a shot, then a slight delay, and then you have the shots coming in after the fact. And you're like, oh, well, he's not facing them at that moment in time. There are plenty of instances where somebody's turned away from you and they're firing. It's obviously
well,
a
he's not
chaotic
touching the
scene.
gun. The Wall Street Journal did the frame by frame, and they
Right,
found
he's
at
not.
no
Well, he
point
can't
was
be
he touching
touching.
the gun.
He can't be touching the gun there if it's in a Border Patrol agent's possession. So
Right. So why
Well,
are
but
they
even
in
prior,
reasonable
why did they
fear?
draw? Why did they ever draw their firearms? I don't think it was because he was reaching for a gun or saw.
it's because they identified a gun on his possession, which is why they were shouting gun, gun, gun. And
Sure, but
again,
it can't be the
if it
rule
was,
that if you have a gun on you, the cops can draw their firearms and execute you, especially
but
when
that's not
leading
what
up to the
happened. So
circumstances. But there is leading up to the circumstances. There's no reason to think that this guy was a threat or that
if
this guy
if
was.
you if you have a firearm, you can watch as many traffic stops as you want where somebody identifies that they have a legal gun in the car. There is a great chance that the officer will draw their gun just based on the notification that you have a gun. And that's not even in a situation where somebody's actively resisting arrest and there's a struggle. So like they didn't
That
shoot
is
him because he had a
absolutely not the
possession of a
case.
gun.
That is
100%.
absolutely not true. I've seen so much cop slot videos. They do not just draw their firearm just because you identify that you have one in the car. Now, if you're reaching for a gun, or if officers believe you're reaching for a gun, or if you're scuffling and somebody identifies a firearm,
If
sure.
if they expect the chance of a deadly force threat, then they will, then not all the time. Obviously, you can find videos where this doesn't happen, but they will very likely draw their firearms in that scenario because you want to have it at the ready.
I agree,
Because
but
the
you just
draw
totally changed your argument. You said expect deadly force. Just merely
No, I didn't
identifying
say
a
expect
firearm.
deadly force. I said expect them to have their guns out.
That's not what you did. Well, okay. If you want
You
to say
said
that,
that
that's
he was
fine.
executed
No,
for
no, you
having
you
a
just said that they
firearm.
expect deadly force threat. A cop will not draw his weapon
Yeah,
simply because you've identified that you have a firearm. This would be
because they
totally
expect
improper.
a firearm is a deadly force threat.
Yeah, but he's not if you're not brandish. I've been pulled over several times with a firearm in my car or concealed carry. Just because you identified to the officer you have a firearm doesn't mean that they're going to pull their gun out and aim it at you. They'll probably ask to be the ones to remove it. They'll probably ask to be the ones to handle the firearm, which is fine. But simply having a firearm does not necessitate them brandishing their weapons at you.
Again, but
Especially on the
you're
back
cutting
of
out
them
the
fucking you.
context. You're cutting out the context of this situation. He didn't just have a firearm on him when they first approached him. He had it mid resisting arrest. That's when this information was revealed, and
That
that's
was
when
when
the
it was
guns were
revealed, but he
drawn.
didn't. It's not. He didn't pull the firearm at all. The cop was
But
fighting him
that's
on the
when this
ground. The cop
information
was
became known to the officers.
sure. That's fine, but they shouldn't have been tackling him and pushing him onto the ground. There was no
But
reason for.
he intervened in their other enquenture with that lady. Like
Not,
he
It,
put
I
his
mean,
body
okay, but he
between
did
them.
not
it
assault.
doesn't. It doesn't
Hang on, one
matter.
second, one
There's no.
second.
There's
Let's Sean, let's just be clear. Everyone's seen the video, and I
Yeah.
understand when you see him. We see a woman pushed to the ground who he may or may have not have been with, and then we see him kind of step in front of and put an arm up in almost like a de-escalation attempt, and then he does touch the officer, but you acknowledge he wasn't like assaulting the officer. That
I
maybe
never
it was a
made that case.
mistake
I
to
said
touch
he was
him.
intervening with whatever that encounter was.
And does that inherently constitute obstruction if you simply step into a
Yes, but,
situation?
like he was literally putting his body in between them to obstruct them. Like if you go see somebody get arrested on the street, like go put your body between that person.
I mean, I
and the
agree that's a
officer
mistake to
and see
do.
what
I
you
agree
get
that's a
charged with.
mistake to do.
Hold on, wait. To be clear, the lady was not being arrested. We have no evidence of that whatsoever. The cop is just shoving people over. It just seems like the cop is just
It does
attacking
look
people.
bad.
Well, not just bad, but the cop is just acting with an unjustified use of force that makes no sense unless he's just like attacking people. Like there's
Again,
at no point in an arrest you're just shoving people over for what?
Again,
Why?
fine. If you see an officer put somebody on the ground and it's not clear whether they're arresting them or not, then go put your body in between
It's
you
still a
and that
bad idea.
person,
I think
and
so.
then
I think
see if that's going to work out for you.
Sure. So you've conceded the whole argument because you keep morphing the words every time.
I'm
If
not
you see an
morphing
officer-
anything.
You are. If you see an officer put somebody on the ground, if the
Yeah, if you
officer
see
was like,
them- So
that's
first of
not
all,
what we're
that
talking
woman
about.
that
We're
woman
not
was in the
talking
middle
about the
of
officer
traffic.
going to the ground. We're not talking about any of that. He shoves the woman with his arm, right? Do you acknowledge that? He just shoves the woman aside with his arm.
Yeah, he shoves
right?
the woman that's in the way. Yeah,
Well, she wasn't in the way when he shoved her.
he
Right?
shoves the woman. Okay, go ahead.
So he shoves the woman with his arm. Doesn't look like there's I don't know why you would do that. If you want to arrest him, you'd probably hold them still and arrest them, right? It seems like he just gets mad, just shoves the lady away. And then the guy, I don't even know if he puts his hand on her, but it looks like he steps in and then turns around to pick the woman up as the cop just starts pepper spraying the guy with the phone. Why? There's no
so
reason.
He gets in between the officer and the subject that he's engaged with. And
Which
it's
is not a good
whether or not he
idea.
wanted to arrest that person.
He's not engaged with the subject anymore. He just pushed her, he just shoved her away, and that was it.
He's moving towards her when this guy comes and cuts them in between. You don't know what's going to happen.
Sure, you don't, but I know that there's no reason for the cop to start pepper spraying the guy. The guy's locked in like a death QuickTime event. As soon as the cop starts to close the gap, but he pepper sprays the dude for no reason. We've got escalation there. Then they start fighting. I don't even want to say fighting. The guy doesn't even fight back. He turns around. He's slipping on the ice. And then the cop gets his whole crew over to tackle the dude and execute him.
Yeah, Sean, can I ask you this? You don't think the ICE officer, regardless of whether you think the ultimate decision to pull the trigger is justified, you don't think these officers, like, seem well trained and handled the situation well, do you? Because it seems like amateur hour to me. It seems like they escalated. Seems like there was like 6 of them and they couldn't restrain one, probably soy-filled guy who is not exactly, looks like he's a beast, difficult to control. It doesn't seem like ICE is exactly sending their best to Minneapolis right now.
I mean, first of all, I believe this was like CBD, Customs and Border Patrol, not ICE.
Yeah, so DHS still, but yeah.
But again, like, what are you supposed to do in this scenario? Like draw me a picture of how to do it better if they can't get in control of this individual that's on the ground. And then during that process, which is seconds long, they end up finding out that he has a gun. Like, one of them got in there and removed the gun. I think that was really effective to get in there and remove the gun.
Why?
Unfortunately, that was
why were they even dogpiling him?
So was that part bad training, or was that part good training?
The bad training was, one is shoving a lady with your arm. There's just no reason to do that. So that was bad. Pepper spraying the guy for literally no reason. That was bad. Attacking or tackling this dude who's now totally discombobulated, who doesn't seem to be a threat at all. That was bad. Bringing all your boys over to tackle the dude. That was bad. Smacking the dude in the face over and over again with the bottom of the mace or whatever. That was bad. And then taking the gun off him, having a negligent discharge, and then executing the guy. All of these things were bad.
They pepper sprayed the guy after he interceded in their action, which you're like, well, I don't know if it was going to be an arrest.
Justify a pepper spray?
That's not enough to pepper spray the guy.
What are you supposed to? So you're like, don't shove them. Don't pepper spray.
Wait.
There was already a previous engagement with him where they told them to move back in the earlier video.
Sure, I just
so
want
they
to
had already warned him. So what are you talking about?
Clearly state that. So when a guy is standing in front of you with a phone, the only thing that you can do from that point on is
he's not just standing in front of them. Like, I get, like, in order for your scenario to work, you have to not tell the truth. But he was interceding in between him and the woman that the ICE agent or the Border Patrol agent was engaged with.
That was it. He wasn't punching him. He wasn't hitting him. He
wasn't just standing in front of him, and there was no there was no context around it. He did not put his body in between him and the person that he was engaged with. No,
so you're telling me the only path from that point forward is he has to start pepper spraying the guy.
I'm saying that is a proper use of pepper spray in that scenario. Like, what do you want
it is. He's not using force to threaten anybody. You could say you're under arrest for resistance or obstruction. Turn around, put your hands behind your back, and then if he attacks you or tries to run away, maybe then something could be justified. But simply the fact that he didn't immediately back down and turn around, does that really justify?
This guy was already pushed by agents prior to this in a previous video. Have you not seen that video from
I have. He didn't strike or do anything back.
He was approaching them before.
Which goes to the officer's state of mind that he shouldn't have thought the guy was a threat because he didn't attack or do anything there either.
No, he ignored a warning. Typically, when you're escalating your behavior as a person like that which again, he already approached the agents. They already pushed him away in the previous video. And then they get into it with this woman. She ends up getting shoved to the ground. He throws his body in between them, which you describe, again, very deceptively as just standing. He just happened to be standing there. Like, isn't that weird how he happened to end up right between the Border Patrol agent and the woman on the ground? And then they use the pepper spray.
Yes, he's blocking the officer, sure, but the officer's not getting into it. The one, he just rage shoves her away. That's all you see. And the guy moves over, he intercedes, and then he goes to pick the woman up, and then the officer starts pepper spraying. You don't think there's any other action the officer could have taken at that point?
I mean, he could have tackled him. There was plenty of things that you could do.
He couldn't have just said, sir, move aside. He could have said, sir, I'm going to arrest you now.
They already engaged with this guy before, and he still didn't back off.
They didn't say they were detaining him. They didn't say they were arresting him, and he did back off. That's why there was no earlier engagement that ended in physical violence.
No, he didn't back off because he jumps in right here.
He doesn't
He was already warned in that previous instance. Are we pretending that didn't happen?
Okay.
So, Stephen, I want to ask you a question because I've seen liberals and progressive commentators, and I
Don't lump
understandably
me in with
upset.
them. I'm the Rittenhouse guy. Remember? Sorry.
I
Go ahead.
know you're a little different because you are actually a Second Amendment pro-gun rights guy, but and suddenly a lot of conservatives are like, if you have a gun, you're asking to be shot. Not you, Sean, of course. Not saying that about you, but we've definitely seen a few people get roasted for that. But I do wonder, we've seen people like Mayor Frey, I think, really make this situation worse, encourage people to engage in kind of disruptive protests that cross the line into illegality, like taking over a church. I mean, I don't want to get into that whole debate, but for example, this idea that people are praising this man who was killed, which of course his life being lost is terrible, and I really do think important questions needs to be asked for putting himself in that situation. There almost seems to be at least a portion of the left that seems to be actively encouraging people to interfere with ICE operations. And even if you think those operations are wrong or immoral or illegal, that seems like only a recipe for putting more people in danger. Do you not agree that that's a bad idea to do?
So there are multiple parts to this question. So the first thing is, unless I've missed something, I don't know if I agree with the characterization that Frey or Walls has told people to do anything illegal. I feel like I hear them over and over again say, make sure that
Well,
you're
he called for
protesting
the
legally.
release of the activist who criminally obstructed the church ceremony.
Was that criminal? So
Yeah,
I watched.
it was
So
definitely.
I watched.
I think it was criminal. Yeah,
Well,
you
sure, I
can't
know you
shut
think.
down someone's service. Shout
Sure.
it
So
down.
I watched this. So and I really did. I watched about an hour of it. I couldn't see more. If anybody asked them to leave and they didn't, past that point, it's easily trespassing for sure, right? But I don't know. I feel like there was like a 30-minute inside thing, and then everybody left.
I mean,
I don't know if.
I don't want
I
to,
mean,
but it is a
mhm,
FACE Act violation when you go and
maybe.
shout down a church service, and that's what it's being investigated for.
Sure. Okay. I mean, it could be investigated for that, sure. But I mean, I don't know if I heard any like the mayor or the governor say like go into churches and protest into churches. You could argue that. No, actually, I won't even steel man that. Like they've over and over again told people that if they're going to protest, to do it lawfully, to do it peacefully, to not be aggressing on people or to be doing things that could be criminal behavior. Like I've heard that statement said over and over and over again. Even if people are engaged in some level of criminal behavior when it comes to blocking ICE people or protesting where they shouldn't, the answer can't just be execute them. That's just absolutely absurd. And you can feel that that ICE is acting in an immoral way that is still within the borders of the law, and so there's some level of civil disobedience where you're like, well, I'm going to accept getting arrested in this case. I wouldn't necessarily recommend people do that because it's breaking the law, and who knows what the criminal penalties will be. But like the answer can't be execution.
All right, you keep saying execution. That doesn't feel like a fair characterization to me when you're saying it's not like they set out there looking to kill someone in cold blood, Stephen. It's a situation gone wrong.
When it's going wrong, but the officers are like feeding into it every single level of the interaction. Like again, if you watch that video from start to finish, one, I don't know why the officers are shoving people around. It's kind of cringe.
I agree. No,
and then two, and then like him pepper spraying the guy. Like all of this is just escalating until somebody dies, and then it's like, well, I don't know what happened. It's like, why? Like there's no reason for them to be behaving in such a manner. You're inducing an event where you're going to have to kill somebody.
I mean, what we're seeing by these left-wing agitators is not protesting. Like, if you had an issue with your local police department and you decided to quote-unquote protest them by following them around during the course of their operations, blowing whistles to make sure suspects that they were looking for escaped, obstructing them in the middle of traffic,
all of that is legal,
like
right?
we would call that criminal activity.
Hold
like,
on.
you can't do that to your local police department. You can't do that to your local police department. So the idea that this is like regular, ordinary
following
protesting,
somebody in
it's
video recording them and
agitating.
blowing a whistle, is that legal or illegal?
It depends, actually. Like, you could call it like disturbing the peace if you're making like obnoxious noise. Like, I live in New York City. If I play music too loud, the police will show up to my apartment.
If you want to arrest, yeah, that was a good pivot. So that's not illegal, right? If they want to arrest them for disturbing the peace or whatever, I'd be surprised.
Obstructing law enforcement operations is definitely illegal. Again,
but
if the police are raiding a building in order to arrest somebody and you were blowing a whistle so that person in said building would escape, which is what these people are effectively doing, that would obviously be illegal.
Well, my understanding is it's not illegal. This is why you have apps on your phone that will literally warn you when there's a speed trap ahead, that this stuff has been decided to be free speech in the United States.
We're not talking about the same thing. You're interfering with an active operation.
It's notifying people of law enforcement presence has been in some cases upheld to be a form of protected speech.
Yeah, that's Again, you're talking about something different, though. If you go during an operation, let's say they were doing a drug bust in your neighborhood, right? You're a libertarian, you're against the drug war. If you follow them on their way to a drug bust and made as much noise as possible in order to make sure that the people who had the drugs in the house that they were about to raid got away, do you think you would be arrested? Or do you think
Yes,
they'd
I
be like,
do.
oh,
I think
First
that
Amendment
probably
activity,
I
no
do
big
think I
deal?
would get
In
arrested.
that case, you
Yes.
yeah, in that case you could be. But for the ICE stuff here, it doesn't seem like these are the types of targeted operations they're claiming. The names that they've been releasing, Minnesota has come out and said they don't even have some of these people in custody, or these people don't exist, or the records are like 20 years old. So it seems like we can't even trust that ICE is on any kind of targeted operation. For Renee Good, apparently they're just going door to door knocking. It wasn't a targeted raid or targeted
That's
bust.
not, but
And I
that,
believe for Alex Pretti, I think that he was just in front of like they were in front of some federal office or whatever. So that wasn't a targeted raid or
that's
bust
not,
either.
first of all, that's not information that these people who are following them around know. They're not like, oh, well, I'm against ICE enforcement because they have technically outdated information. They're actively trying to disrupt them when they know that they're finding a person. So they have the
You just
intent
said they
to
don't know it, and
disrupt
now you say they do
a
know
law
it.
enforcement
No, it's not to know.
operation.
You're simply wrong on the law there.
Sean,
Just by blowing the whistle by cops moving around in a neighborhood or ICE moving around in a neighborhood, that doesn't count as obstruction. It's been ruled on. This is not obstruction.
Oh,
It's not.
Sean, you do acknowledge that they do have a First Amendment right to record the officers, right?
Yeah, you have a right to record, of course.
So when people are following, and that's what this guy seemed to have originally be doing, is trying to serve as an observer and record ICE. And frankly, I have no issue with that. And I think that people, while they shouldn't get involved in the situations, which I think he did choose to do, and I do think was a mistake, even if it didn't justify his death, I do think people have a right. And I am kind of disturbed. I'm going to do.
Again, like, I have nothing against this guy personally. I wish he was not shot in this particular situation. It is a tragedy. You have every right to record law enforcement during their operations, but obviously when you're blocking people in, which is what Renee Good was doing, when you're doing
Renee
the
wasn't
whistles to
blocking
make sure
anybody in, though,
people
right?
get
Wait,
away,
that was just a
the
lie.
whole
Wait, who
entire
was Renee
purpose of
blocking
that
in?
is to
Who was
the
Renee
whole,
blocking in?
she was blocking the road.
You just said when they're blocking people in. That's not
She was
blocking
blocking
the
the
road.
road.
Okay, so you've changed your words. That's fine.
All
She
right,
was
well,
blocking
I
the road.
do.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't misspeak for like 1 second. She was blocking the
You're not
road, or
mistaken.
as
Blocking
many
in
people would
implies something
say,
much different.
not
You're repeating
blocking
the lie that
anything,
Kristi
just
Noem said.
parking perpendicular in the road
Yeah,
as you
you're
would
repeating the
normally
lie that
do.
Kristi Noem said, where Kristi Noem said that she was blocking people in or ramming them with her car. That was the lie that Kristi Noem
Well,
said.
she
I guess you
rammed
believe,
the
but she
officer
wasn't
with the
doing
car.
that.
I mean, that's on video. So
No, the officer jumped in front of the car and he shouldn't have been there. He should
no,
know better.
she
right?
squared
Part
up
of the
to face
training.
him. Again, that's
No,
on the video. Like when she
really?
was
Wait, then
reversing,
why is it that
she
after
aligned
she
the car
died,
with him.
she aligned to go right, which is exactly the path the car took?
No,
Why
she
is the
went
officer in front of a
straight.
moving vehicle? Why would
She
the
went
officer? She didn't
straight
go
and
straight.
then was turning. And again, here's what we're doing right now.
We've seen the video. What?
We're basing this on, oh, well, and when I slowed down the video and I looked at it with hindsight in 2020, which is the exact opposite of the legal standard, I determined based on the trajectory of the wheels that she was churned enough,
No.
whatever that means, to make that an unjustified shooting. No,
The
that's
legal
ridiculous.
standard-
Sean,
the
I
legal-
don't.
Right
I
up on the
don't-
car,
no,
she
wait.
makes
Just to be
contact
clear.
with him. The idea that he has to count because she was all the way reversed, remember? There's 3 turns in a steering wheel. He has to count whether she made 1 full revolution, which would be straight, or
That's a
1.5, which would be
filibuster.
all the way for the
It's a filibuster 'cause he knows
turn.
his
And
unlimited
then he
time.
makes
It's
that
just a filibuster.
determination in a split second,
Mhm.
and that's a fair standard, is absurd.
Yeah, good
All right,
filibuster.
Again,
Sean,
you
let
can't tell the
Destiny-
truth.
let Destiny
One
give his
to
thought
make your
on that.
argument, so
So
continue.
the truth, wait. So the truth is that it's a totality of the circumstances. The officer's been interacting with her for over a minute beforehand. It doesn't seem like she was a murderer. This is like a large, like lesbian white wine mom woman. He's arguing with her and her partner. There's no reason for that officer to have in his mind the idea that she's about to try to murder cops. And
I mean,
given
except for her accelerating at him. And again, you're trying to do this thing where you make it based on her intent, which is not
It's
what's
not
argued.
about-
It's not
why
the
do you
standard.
keep
It's whether or
lying?
not
It's about-
a
I said
reasonable
multiple
officer
times-
in that same
Yeah.
position would fear death or serious bodily injury with the
considering a
car
total-
accelerating towards
more
him.
filibustering. It's considering a totality of the circumstances.
No,
the woman
that's
had
not
shown
the standard.
It
Is
is
whether
the
a
standard.
reasonable officer in that scenario would fear death or serious bodily injury, as the
Yes.
again, not without the benefit of hindsight, with the information
when no
known
one's
to him
talking
at the
about
time.
hindsight. Why do you say hindsight? It's a totality.
Because you're
of
talking about the wheels being
circumstances.
turned, like
I'm
from
not
which
talking about
again
the
people
wheels being
describe
turned. I've said this
from
multiple
behind.
times. It was her interaction before with the cop. There was nothing violent said. There was nothing crazy going on. She didn't seem to be demonstrating any lethal or violent intent. And no reasonable person up to that point who ends up walking in front of the car would think like, "Oh God, she's about to murder me." If you look at the
She's about to
totality of
hit him with the
circumstances,
car as she
if
is
you look at-
running at him with the car.
as he walks in front of her car that's moving
Well,
in
she
the
squared
street.
up to face him when
But
she
Sean,
reversed.
She
guys,
backed up
guys,
to
I gotta
reverse to
retake
Yeah,
the
leave.
floor
and then
here for a
she
second.
turned her wheels and aligned
So,
better with
so
him.
Sean, guys,
Totality of the circumstances.
hang
She
on,
wasn't
hang on.
violent or anything prior to this.
Hang on. So I didn't necessarily want to go and debate the whole Renee Good shooting as well, but it is important and it does matter. Sean, obviously you're right that if someone tries to run you over with a car, that is what would justify it. But the question is whether that's what actually happened. And I don't think it's clear. There are multiple different video angles that he was struck. One video appears to show that he was, but others appear to show otherwise. It's all very complicated. And also, again, without wanting to relitigate this all, he did continue to shoot through the side window at her once she was very clearly not going to hit him.
In 0.7 seconds.
But each instance of the use of lethal force has to be justified. And
That's
I don't
all
know
considered one instance. That's totally wrong.
each pulling of the trigger has to be legally justified. It's not
That's
just
totally
you can start
wrong.
spraying,
It's one
and if your
instance.
original
You're talking
shot
about
is
0.7
valid.
seconds. The court has recognized multiple times that human beings are human beings, and the idea that he's supposed to have this like hyper perception in 0.7 seconds, which is the difference between shot 1 and shot 3, and know that shot 1 was effective enough or shot 2 was effective enough or 3 is absurd. Like,
I
again,
do
you can
think
watch
they are
videos
responsible
online.
for every shot that they take with their service weapon, and I don't think
Again,
these people are.
It'll be all three of these shots will be seen the exact same way, just because of the length of time between each shot. In extended situations, it might be different, but again, when you're considering whether the shoot is legal and good or not, you're considering a totality of the circumstances, which are the circumstances that lead up to the shoot. It's not just the moment that the car starts moving towards the guy. It's everything leading up to that. They didn't have any violent encounters. The woman didn't display any violent intent. The guy's walking in front of her car and whatever multiple times, so clearly he didn't feel like this was a threat or this was a
when
thing she
he
could
was
do.
filming her, she wasn't an issue, but when they tried to get her out of the car and she decided to take off, that's when it became an issue.
Why
When
was
she
he
decided to
filming
take
her?
off. See what you just said there? When she decided to take off, not ram him with her car, but when she was
Because her
pulling out to
intent
leave.
doesn't matter, and I
Exactly.
don't have to lie
Exactly.
in order
The
to
intent
make my
doesn't-
point.
Yes, her intent doesn't matter.
Like, I don't have to
but
read
you
her
should be able
mind to understand
ascertain.
that a car that's 2 tons is a serious threat of bodily injury or death.
Then why was he standing in front of the car right after he backed up?
You mean after she squared up to face him
Why
and
was
put
he
him
standing
more in
after
front
she
of the
backed
car?
up? After she
was
backed up,
circling
why
the
would he stand
car.
in front of the car?
Well,
He
she
could
was
have moved
backing up
faster,
then, and then she's turned to drive and then started accelerating.
and he could have just continued to move. He stopped. He would have been out of the way of her car. What was he planning on?
Oh, in
stopping with his
hindsight,
bare
with
hand?
2020, like, you could make that argument, but that's
It's
not
so
the legal
crazy. I've
standard.
never needed a hindsight. It is the legal standard, also, not hindsight
it's not.
2020, but
It's
the
quite
totality of
literally not.
circumstances. The totality of the circumstances is the legal standard, and the totality of circumstances doesn't make her seem like she's a deadly threat. It's not just at the moment that she starts moving forward. It's everything leading up to that.
Well, again, it's not just a deadly threat. It's a threat of death or serious bodily injury that a reasonable officer with the same information would act in that situation or perceive a deadly or serious bodily injury threat.
Why did
2-ton
none of the other
vehicle,
officers perceive
serious.
it?
The ones that weren't in serious danger, the ones that were
Like
on
a
the side of
foot
the car?
away from him. Yeah, the ones that were like a foot away from the guy. Why did neither of them seem to perceive this deadly threat, this threat of
The
serious
ones that
bodily harm?
weren't in front of the car.
The ones that were a foot away from the guy.
That weren't in front of the car.
Well, they could
Yeah.
still act
That
to
were watching
defend their
her,
colleague,
their officer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and they
But,
didn't
like, they
seem to
weren't
feel
in front of
need
the
to.
car. Like, that's why.
Maybe
So,
he
guys,
should've
I
got
want to
the
move
car
us along.
accelerating
I do want to move
anyway.
us along.
How quickly and easily that would have been.
I'm not sure we're going to get to the bottom of it, but ultimately it will continue to be investigated. Maybe there may be a point of agreement on the next question related to this, actually, which is the interesting performance of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem in the aftermath of this shooting. I want to play you a clip of her at a press conference immediately after the shooting of Alex Pretti. Listen to this.
Individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently. Fearing for his life and for the lives of his fellow officers around him, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics were on the scene immediately and attempted to deliver medical aid to the subject, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect also had 2 magazines with ammunition in them that held dozens of rounds. He also had no ID. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at the scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
So here's what I would say is that, listen, maybe you think this was a defensive shoot. Maybe you think it's justified. I don't, but okay, we could have that discussion. For the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security to get in front of the cameras after an American citizen was just killed by one of her officers, and immediately, based on the fact that he has a gun and ammunition, which millions of people carry every day, suggest that he must have been in some plot. They did also call him a domestic terrorist, again, baselessly, to kill law enforcement, like to go and shoot up and do a mass shooting targeting law enforcement, is totally baseless and irresponsible. Sean, I respect that you have a more conservative viewpoint on some of these issues, but you are not like a team red automaton who will just defend anything like some people. Surely you agree that that is unacceptable from the secretary.
Right. So there's two issues with what I had that she said there. First of all, actually three. One, we really in this country need, I'm not going to comment on an ongoing investigation to like come back into play because like she says he approached with a firearm, which is like a not technically a lie, but is effectively like the biggest lie that you could tell because he didn't have the firearm out. He didn't present it. Like it communicates the wrong information despite technically being true. And then she goes on to imply that he's a mass shooter or he was a potential mass shooter or he was targeting law enforcement, like to kill law enforcement, maybe not in a mass shooting kind of way, when that's not supported by the evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. If I was planning to do something that terrible as Kristi Noem described, I probably wouldn't wait for me to be on the ground surrounded by 7 law enforcement agents and then for them to find the gun for me to execute my plot. So yeah, this was absurd. Kristi Noem is an embarrassment. And again, you should not go off like half-cocked with bad information and like deliver messages like this. Because even the part that she said that's technically true in the beginning, like, is a lie because of what she's implying by it.
Yeah, Stephen, when you see Stephen Miller, who shares your name, of course, come out and immediately brand this guy an assassin who tried to kill law enforcement, I mean, I do believe that Trump has the right to enforce federal immigration law, and he was elected on a mass deportation agenda, but I think we at bare minimum deserve some degree of honesty and not this just blatant, brazen lying.
I mean, they've done this with almost every big shooting incident that happened. They did it with the Charlie Kirk shooting as well, where Nancy Mace and other people have literally just come out and started ascribing a whole bunch of stuff to this guy before we even knew who the shooter was. We've seen Kash Patel make crazy statements. We've seen Kristi Noem and Trump make crazy statements. Like, they just want to get ahead of the story so that they can kind of like spin whatever narrative or story they can before any of the actual facts come out or until the next insane thing has happened in 2 other days and then we've all moved on from it. So yeah, I mean, it totally undermines credibility from all of our agencies. Like, you can no longer trust almost anything that they put out because you've seen that they're willing to just, like, if the head of the agency is willing to come forth and lie like blatantly about videos we've all seen, I don't know, what am I supposed to trust anything else they put out? I'm not sure.
No, it's a serious problem. I mean, these people are also responsible for national emergencies, for, if there is, God forbid, an attack on the United States, DHS is going to be putting out updates. And I just don't know how we're supposed to take this essentially, and I will say this, Ice Barbie, seriously, right? She dresses up in costumes to go on TV, of uniforms that she's not actually needing to be wearing. She wears them as props on a television set, then goes back to her condo. And I just think she's totally embarrassed the administration, and they can do better, even if you don't agree with their agenda. I mean, surely there's a better advocate for it than this, but they appear to be standing by her. Here is Caroline Levitt.
First question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem.
How is that possible, that you could see everything that's going on and still have confidence and trust in Kristi Noem, Sean?
Well, I mean, listen, Trump is also like a backstabber guy who likes to flatter you before he fires you. So that could be the kiss of death for all we know. But yeah, look, you shouldn't have confidence in listen, I've heard the argument for why the right or the government is throwing out these narratives initially, and they say, oh, it's because the left will make their own narrative, a la Michael Brown or whatever, past instance that justifies it. It's just, I don't buy it at all. Like, you should not do this, especially if you're the government. Like, let people on the internet that are analyzing the videos like the Zapruder film, like, make their cockamamie theories or whatever, but like, there's a level of like prestige when you're in the government that you shouldn't do this. So people say, how do they have confidence? It's just doubling down on your side. Like, our administration does nothing wrong. We have confidence in them. But like, as we've seen many times, you could have confidence in somebody up until the moment they're fired.
Yeah. Do you think that's where we're heading, Destiny? Is she going to be the first major firing from the cabinet?
Probably not. I feel like he stood by her through so much other extreme stuff. As long as she can continue to tank everything, it feels like they have their fall guy for this now that Bovino or whatever is gone. Um, yeah, so she'll probably still be here, and then
Well,
we'll
yeah, you
see.
you mentioned Greg Bovino, and of course he's the chief of border patrol. He is apparently being reassigned and no longer going to be in charge of the Minnesota operation. So that does suggest maybe a pivot. But I want to play you this clip of him because I find this extremely bizarre that even now, days after this incident, we still have no idea who the officer involved was. But that is, of course, in part because of the new DHS policy of masking officers and keeping them anonymous. Bovino was asked about that. Listen to this.
Commander Bovino, when it comes to the shooting, from what I understand, there were 2 agents who fired shots. We know one of the agents had 8 years experience, and we know he was a less lethal instructor and had this training. What did the other agent, what was his history, and are they both working right now, or are they on administrative leave?
All agents that were involved in that scene are working, not in Minneapolis, but in other locations. That's for their safety. There's this thing called doxing, and the safety of our employees is very important to us. So we're going to keep those employees safe. As far as the number of shots, the number of agents involved, that, again, is going to come out in the investigation.
So it's bizarre to me that these agents are still working. I mean, even if it was a legally justified shooting, they just took someone's life and were involved in a traumatic incident. Even if they're not guilty of anything, they should still probably be on administrative leave while it's investigated. And then I have to say, I understand that they face a lot of threats and intimidation right now, but to me, the masks have to come off, right? We cannot have anonymous people roaming the streets and apprehending people and using lethal force against citizens, and we don't even know who they are. Sure, they face threats, and that should be prosecuted by the FBI, to the fullest extent of the law, anybody who tries to harass or threaten their family or anything like that. But we ask judges, we ask politicians, we ask everyday law enforcement, all to be identifiable by badge number, by public name. And it's part of the job, unfortunately, as it may be. I mean, even as public figures, we get stalkers, we get people sending things to our address, we get doxxed. And yet, for some reason, they seem to think it's okay to have ICE officers and other DHS officials just running around masked and anonymous. Sean, do you support that, or do you agree that that's a problem?
Look, I understand why they have the masks. Obviously, ICE agents and their family members have been targeted in the past by these left wing activists, but I genuinely agree with you. Like, American civilian law enforcement, you're supposed to know who they are when they're operating out in the field. And, like, yeah, we should prosecute the people that are exposing their friends and family and targeting them in all those kind of ways that they were doing in the first Trump administration. But that doesn't mean that they should be anonymous enforcers. Again, like, it's very rare circumstances where your law enforcement does this, usually where they're going up against gang members or they're undercover, but then they're also participating in a raid that you don't see their faces. And like, every single operation related to immigration is the opposite of very rare circumstances. As far as the paid administrative leave thing, I mean, that's why we have paid administrative leave. Like, even if this is the cleanest shooting, which, it is a messy shooting, but even if it's the cleanest shooting that you absolutely could have, like, firing your weapon at a human being and taking their life is something that you need some time off for. Usually you're supposed to see a psychologist or something of the sort. So again, I agree that they should be there. I mean, it's better that they're moved out of Minneapolis than in Minneapolis, but like, we have paid administrative leave for a reason, and we give a ton of money to Border Patrol and ICE in the big beautiful bill, so that we should have enough people that these guys could take some time off.
Stephen, do you think they might behave a little differently if their faces were on camera? I do wonder, that's just natural human psychology, that they might be quicker to shove a woman indefensibly or to escalate situations when they're hiding behind these bandanas that are not even official masks. So what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, probably, yeah. You mask people up and they can act crazy sometimes. Yeah. I mean, we should know who they are. I think everything's been said on this. I agree. I don't. It's just the administration is just acting in the most divisive and aggressive way possible. Like if Trump cared at all, and Republicans don't care about illegal immigration because it's a faux issue to them. They just throw it up whenever they want to like make voters mad about a thing. But you can tell with the way that they approach it that they don't actually care about it as an issue, and that the voters don't seem to care much about it as an issue, aside from things to vote on. Because like imagine trying to explain to a European friend. So ICE is mass deployed right now doing immigration enforcement, and they're like, oh, that must be where, like in Texas or California, or no, up in Minnesota. Why? Like the per capita numbers don't make sense. The absolute numbers don't make sense. It's because a cognitively impaired Republican kid, made a stupid video where 90% of the information was fake, and they decided to just go mass deployment of ICE to the state for just no reason.
Sean, your thoughts
But
on
yeah,
that?
so I mean, you can look by the numbers. The per capita rates of people removed from Texas and Florida are significantly higher than in blue states, and the reason for this is because you have state and local coordination. Like Destiny talks about how the Republicans don't care about illegal immigration or any of this. In reality, the Democrats are actively benefiting off of this conflict. That's why they don't work with the feds. That's why they encourage people to go out there. That's why they tell their voters consistently that they're not legitimate law enforcement. That's why you'll see on social media all these people saying, oh, well, ICE can't arrest you because they're not a general law enforcement agency,
Which
even
is
though
not
they
true.
absolutely can arrest you for obstructing their operations, just like any law enforcement agency could do so, because they want these conflicts to fester. I mean, Tim Walz after this compared, I guess, I don't know who he's comparing to, but Minnesotans to Anne Frank, which again implies that ICE is the Nazis. And spoiler alert, if you were in the times of Anne Frank and you had to deal with Nazi soldiers, you would be justified to kill those soldiers. So this is what is being stoked up by these comparisons because they want this conflict. Like they benefit from it politically, and it's the biggest distraction for somebody like Tim Walz, who doesn't have to deal with the consequences of Nick Shirley's video, which of course Steven had to mischaracterize.
Well, let's not litigate that. Let's not litigate that. That could be another episode.
I want to say just to anybody listening out there who's ever heard me say crazy things about Republicans in the past, this is why I don't think that it's worth it for Walz to take like the ultra kind position and to say, oh, there should be no violence and protest, because people like Sean and all the other Republicans will constantly mischaracterize every single thing they say. Both the mayor and the governor of Minneapolis and of Minnesota, respectively, have been unequivocally telling people, do not do illegal things, do not obstruct, don't riot, don't break stuff, like be peaceful, record people, maintain a distance. Like they've been unequivocal in their messaging there, and yet you still have people
do not do illegal things, but they're kind of like the Nazis.
You,
I don't know if you guys know
you
that.
do agree that the Nazi rhetoric
like the problem is you've
stuff.
lost all your moral high ground when you're taking videos and selling merchandise in front of Alligator Alcatraz. You can't conduct yourself in that manner and then go, man, I wonder why Americans are so opposed to our form of deportations. If Donald Trump wanted to, Donald Trump could have said, here's what we're doing. We're going to every single prison in the state, and if you've done a violent misdemeanor or any felony, we're deporting you. He could have made that announcement, and every blue governor, blue mayor, everybody would look like such a loser trying to oppose Trump on that initiative. Because how are you going to protect literal rapists and criminals and everything in your states and cities? But instead, they do the most divisive, most aggressive, most disgusting AI image, AI video, Alligator Alcatraz, selling merchandise, laughing about it, joking about it. I mean, like, what do you expect? Of course, this is what's going to happen.
Well, worse than that,
Steven,
they sent people to. I for a long time I was very critical of sanctuary cities, and I still think it's a problematic policy. But at the same time, when you do have the federal government like sending people to dystopian El Salvadorian prisons without due process, I can kind of understand, Sean, why local authorities wouldn't just be comfortable turning human beings over to them or working with them closely.
I mean, they weren't working with them prior to that, like. Prior to sending, and they were sending Venezuelans to El Salvador because Venezuela was refusing to take their own citizens back. Like there was a reason for
none
that.
of that justifies.
Also, to be clear, that's a lie. I called this out before, and now I've been completely vindicated on the fact that we literally deposed Maduro in a military operation. To say the United States of America couldn't force Venezuela to take back some people is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
This is actually how they did it, because they started taking back people when their citizens started getting sent to El Salvador. So, like, yeah, we could do it. Like, this was the method that they did do it.
No, you would just tell them and you would just do it. The idea that the U.S. lacked the power here is hilariously naive.
Okay.
All right. Well, guys, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate both of you for participating in it, and hopefully we'll do it again sometime.